Hello there and welcome. I'm Ole Brøgger and today I'm going to build something I've been looking very much forward to. I have been preparing a lot of stuff in my head over the last couple of weeks and actually a month. And I prepared something else. I did a lot of 3D prints I'm going to use for this. I had to wait for my Painter Gamemaster foam to arrive. I still have some scraps here. And most important of all, I got these boxes of 10 with batteries, LED lights. We're going to make LED lighted dungeon tiles for the Underdark. Let's get started. I started to cut out some Painter XPS foam. I used 6 sheets in total. For this set of tiles, I want some 3x3 tiles, I want some 6x6 and a couple of 9x9. The sheets do not have square corners and I had to fix that first. I did not get this on film, but out of the box they are not square at all. The bigger tiles, the 9x9 inch, I had to cut out by hand since my Proxon is not big enough. Then I used my tile jig and cut out some gaps in the 3x3 tiles. This time it was not for sewers, but to make some room for battery compartment. On the 6x6 tiles and the 9x9s I had to do this manually. I didn't have a jig for it, so I used my 3x3 jig and a hot knife to cut out the battery compartment. I ended up with 2 9x9s and 4 6x6 and 24 3x3 tiles. I had a lot of cut-offs that didn't have the right size to become a tile, but I used all these for walls. I made a 1.5 inch tall walls and I needed a lot of those. I used my handheld hot wire cutter to cut out some riffles and cavities because I wanted to look like some kind of melted rock. And then I started to glue some of the walls in with my hot glue gun. Cutting out all the walls and gluing them in took a while. I spent 4 whole evenings doing this, so it took a while. I trimmed down some of the cut-offs. I used these for details and elevating the terrain. I also used a couple of my 3D prints. These are from one of the Loot Studios sets. All this cutting made a big mess, so I had to clean up a couple of times. I did a 2-step process with Mod Podge. First, I wanted to use it as a basing glue, where I used cat litter and some smaller rocks. The Mod Podge is usually white, but I mix it with black paint in a 50-50 ratio. First step with Mod Podge is now done. The cat litter and rocks are now stuck, and then I will spray it with some basing glue, just to make sure that nothing will fall off when I give it a second coat of Mod Podge. While the glue was drying up, I started to prime all my 3D prints. I had a couple of plants and some mushrooms. I used my airbrush to prime it with black where I sprayed from below, and then I sprayed it with some white from the top to give it a centerful highlight. Most of these plants and mushrooms will be used as scattered terrain, only the smaller stuff will be glued in on the tiles. For the mushrooms and plants I will use some purple and blue. This is the Air series from the Army Painter. For the bigger mushrooms I will use some pink and teal. For the details I will use an off-white light blue. And to finish it off on the bases I will use Pan Pastel Burnt Umber. That's also because I'm going to use this burnt umber on the ground on the tiles. The tiles have been sitting overnight to dry, and now it is time for the second round of Mod Podge. I let it dry for about an hour and then it was time to use some priming. For this I used the Panzer German grain from Vallejo. This is a very good color for me because it's not quite black and it has a green tint to it. For the inside of the edges I used this Thunderstorm Blue. I wanted to check out where some of my smaller 3D printed plants could go. I didn't glue them in, but I just made room for where they were going to fit. To give the tiles a dirty but still colorful look, I used some pan pastels for some more nuances and colors. When using pan pastels, I would highly recommend to wear a face mask, just to be cautious about the dust getting inside your lungs, and I don't think it's very healthy. This is the part of the project I've been looking forward to. I bought 30 of these fairy lights on Amazon, and I will leave a link in the description below. There is 10 LED lights on each wire, and on some of the tiles I will only use maybe 3 or 4, but on the bigger tiles I will use all of them. But first I will have to remove 2 of the 4 screws. This is because I want to be able to access the batteries, and I have to glue it in on the screw side. I used a stick to poke some holes between the layers of the walls, just so the LEDs won't be visible. I want this effect to be kind of ambient, and this is why I made the double layered walls. I have pushed in some of the LEDs to the holes, and now I can glue in the battery package. I also needed to do some cable management, and for this I made some channels with my hot knife so the wires could be tucked in safely and don't get in the way. I used a hot glue gun to make the wires stay in place. There is 10 LEDs on a single wire, and I didn't have room for all of them, so on the small tiles I had to cut off the access wire. But on the bigger tiles, just to use some more LEDs, I would make the light glow through the ground. To finish off all the LED lights and wires, I covered them in duct tape and put on some magnets. This was a very time-consuming process. I spent almost every evening during a whole week just installing the wires and LEDs. But it was all worth it, and I think the result is pretty good. To give the tiles a final effect, I used this fairy dust from the Army Painter. I thinned it down with some airbrush thinner, and I think the effect is very good. It gives the walls this obsidian look. Finally, I got this crazy idea. I removed a couple of the plants, I rewired some of the LEDs, and then I used some hot glue and fishing wire to make some new plants that could emit light. I looped some fishing line around my fingers, and then I cut one end of the loop open and put a drop of hot glue on my table, pushing down the whole loop with the cut off ends and burning my fingers for a while until the hot glue hardened. Then I could scrape off the hot glue with the wire and cut the other end open. And now I could install the plant on top of the LED with some more hot glue and trim down the plant to the right size. I really love the effect, but it's a bit hard to show on video, but the ends of the fishing line actually emit lights. We are done! I'm just so happy with this project, even though it took me 3 weeks. But the result, I can't be more than happy with it. And it's very satisfying just lighting on all these tiles. I don't regret spending the time on all this. The playability is awesome. There's room for everything, and yeah, I'm just happy with it. Let's have a closer look on the final result. Thank you so much for watching this video to the end. I really appreciate you being here. So if you would be kind to maybe like and subscribe, I would really appreciate it. It's not a requirement, but it will make me a bit more happier every time I can see those numbers go a bit up. This was it for now. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.